behind every single Bitcoin wallet is a node somewhere out there. And if you're not running your own, then you're trusting a third party to run that node for you. So we kind of saw that problem and wanted to solve it. So we tried to make it easier to spin one up, build a fancy user interface for it so you can manage it and you don't have to be in the command line. And yeah, just start to enable the Bitcoin privacy experience.
I live unbanked off of cryptocurrency, and I use Bitrefill extensively because it lets me pay with crypto at places that don't yet accept it directly. This one service, more than any other, helps me live on crypto, pay your prepaid phone bill, or buy gift cards to thousands of major retailers around the world, all with cryptocurrency, including for exact amounts so you don't have to buy more gift credit than you need for a specific purchase. You can use Bitrefill without an account, but if you get an account, you can earn rewards points which translate to savings, and you can also hold a balance denominated in dollars or euros to protect yourself against market crashes. Go to bitrefill.com, click Create Account, and enter the referral code DCN, or follow the link in the description. Hey everyone, I have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with the one and only GuerraMoneta, as he's named. How's it going?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and it's always fun to do intros for Anons, as they were, because it's always like everyone has some sort of an identity in some way, and most people go by their birth names, birth identities, in most contexts. But it does kind of help to have it's all the same. Just like what do we say when we introduce you? But anyway, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Yeah, people just call me Guerra, and I work on the RoninDojo project. And yeah, being a NIM or kind of trying to be anon is, it's more about the ethos thing than it is about truly being anonymous and that kind of thing. So we like to come up with clever little names, and it's funny, everybody in our community, no one uses their real name, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go by the Desert Lakes a lot of times, but very, very much not an anon, as it turns out. But so you're involved, or rather, I believe a co-founder, right, of Ronin?
Yes.
So do you want to just explain for the viewers at home, really quickly, what is it?
Yeah, so short and sweet, RoninDojo is a Bitcoin node building company. We build hardware and software around Bitcoin nodes. That was our main kind of goal, is to help people connect their Bitcoin wallet to a node. Basically, we saw the issue where, behind every single Bitcoin wallet is a node somewhere out there. And if you're not running your own, then you're trusting a third party to run that node for you. So we kind of saw that first fundamental problem and wanted to solve it. So we tried to, make it easier to spin one up, build a fancy user interface for it so you can manage it and you don't have to be in the command line. And yeah, just start to enable like the Bitcoin privacy experience. And it just started with nodes, and now we've expanded to other products, like steel backup plates and increasing our software and premium support. But yeah, basically we do Bitcoin nodes, and we also have cool features on our nodes like Coinjoin, so people can transact privately. Our nodes run over Tor so that your internet service provider can't see what you're doing, and everything's end-to-end encrypted. And basically, we want to help people use Bitcoin as if it was cash, right?
Yeah, and so for like a very brief recap on how like blockchains such as Bitcoin work, uh, basically miners obviously process blocks. They put transactions into the actual blockchain, etc. But the entities that would interact with a mining node would be a full node, which has to have a copy of the entire blockchain. And most people, when they think they're using crypto, like anyone who wants to move their Bitcoin from like your Trezor wallet to something else or whatever, most times they're trusting someone else to run that node element. And then, of course, it goes to the miners, and then you're trusting the miners to do that. And is that kind of a good summary?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Basically, like I said earlier, behind every Bitcoin wallet is a node. That's how the transactions are broadcasted and go to the miners.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically how I like to sum it up for people is that node is processing your transaction data, so you're trusting someone there.
Yeah. So this is obviously a conversation as old as crypto itself, but how would you kind of describe? I've disclaimer. I've heard a lot of people from. I enjoy talking. I hate to say it like this, but I enjoy talking with people from the BSV community because they're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of what most people would consider reality, and it's a great way to like challenge your fundamental notions and things. So that being said, a lot of people in that side of things basically say there's no real point to a node that's not a mining node. Really, like mining nodes are all that really matter. Now, let's kind of walk that back a little bit, but still, if if miners have the final say in transactions, I guess, what is the benefit of running your own node that you control over just trusting another node since you're already in some way, I guess, trusting a miner?
Right. So the way I would respond to that is nodes enforce the consensus rules,
Mm-hmm.
and nodes pick what version of Bitcoin that they want to run. So really the users themselves and the nodes that they're connecting to, they really decide what Bitcoin is,
Mm-hmm.
because the nodes choose, what version of Bitcoin they're running, and therefore broadcast transactions to the miners based on those consensus rules. So, say if the miners got in cahoots and did something malicious, that all the nodes could simply not follow that version of Bitcoin and run a different version, and effectively cut those miners out and not involve them, not broadcast transactions to them, and use their version of Bitcoin. So the crowd, the users and the node runners kind of collectively decide, what Bitcoin is. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, very important because if just the miners or just the developers or one small centralized group controlled or could control the blockchain, then we'd have a very big attack vector there, and the value proposition of Bitcoin might not be what it is today. But thankfully, we have lots of users using different nodes, different implementations, running different versions of Bitcoin, and the majority wins. The whichever version of Bitcoin that the crowd and all their nodes are looking to and running, that's going to be the Bitcoin as we know it today.
Yeah, it's so to basically go into the apocalyptic scenario kind of thing. If you run your own node and the majority of the hash rate goes behind some sort of malicious surveillance technology implemented straight into the protocol, then if the people on the correct, I guess the correct or the non-censored version, there might be a hard fork, there might be the chain might split, they might be on a according to hash rate a minority fork, but all those people are still on the original version and aren't really affected. Whereas if you just trust another node, you kind of are going along for the ride with whichever your node provider decides to go to, which might be surveillance tech. Is that kind of a good sort of recap of what would happen?
Yeah, basically, if you're trusting, like at the network level, you're trusting your
Mm-hmm.
node provider just like at the transactional privacy level. So at the
Mm-hmm.
network level, you're trusting they're running the version of Bitcoin that you fundamentally agree with. Um, and, they're broadcasting transactions. Uh, like, say you were against the whole green mining thing and them trying to censor transactions being
Yeah.
mined because it's not doesn't come from clean energy or something. You could effectively, if you're running your own node or you're trusting a node provider to do that for you, they can effectively make the choice to not get involved with those miners. You could blacklist them. You could not support what they're doing. And that's really at the network level, the power of running your own node is you get to have that vote yourself, and that say yourself rather than some node operator having it for you. Or also the implementation that you're using. You might be using a prepackaged node like we build at RoninDojo, and we'll always do the best to give our users all the options. Do you want to go left or do you want to go right? We'll always give you both options and you choose it yourself.
Yeah, and so for the average person, I guess the average crypto user who doesn't run their own node, their idea of that might be, I'll just download like the Bitcoin Core wallet, which is like a full node wallet. It syncs up to the blockchain, and then that's just how you transact from like a desktop computer. Like there is no real mobile full node as far as the basic user is concerned. But so what are people potentially, I guess, missing out on by just that's like the extent of their running node? Like what else is there involved? Like
Yeah.
basically, where do we
So,
go from Bitcoin just downloading and running Bitcoin Core to Ronin? Like, what's all that
yeah.
stuff in between?
So, what we've just been discussing is supporting the network level of Bitcoin, which, everyone says you should run a node so you can support the network itself, help
Hmm.
propagate new blocks to, miners and help other nodes download the blockchain, all the things that benefit the network at the peer-to-peer level of nodes. But a lot of people don't focus on the fact that a huge amount of applications and useful features can be built on top of a node. So rather than downloading Bitcoin Core and just running it on your desktop with all default settings, you can get a pre-built, pre-packaged node implementation like RoninDojo, and it comes with all of these features like hosting your own block explorer, so you don't have to use third-party block explorer websites that we know are collecting data, like self-hosting the Whirlpool application, so you can do Coinjoin, so people can't uh, easily follow your Bitcoin on chain. It basically obfuscates your transaction history.
Hmm.
Um, there's all kinds of features that come built on top that a lot of people don't realize, like Tor. Bitcoin Core doesn't run over Tor by default, so your internet service provider can see that you're running Bitcoin Core and you're broadcasting transactions and things like that. Um, yeah, basically, there's a whole application layer on top of nodes, and you can connect your wallets to them. You can connect, Sparrow Wallet, Samurai Wallet, Blue Wallet, all kinds of
Hmm.
different wallets, and use the node as your backend, and use all these applications kind of in tandem with it. For example, you could connect Sparrow Wallet to your node and use your hardware wallet through Sparrow Wallet. So you don't
Okay.
have to use Trezor's web wallet and trust them. You can use, your own self-hosted wallet and node at home.
Yeah, and so it's basically a way of unplugging from all the various services and dependencies that we have to the greater crypto ecosystem that we kind of, we trust so many companies and other third parties without really like noticing it maybe. And it's basically getting more direct control over everything you do in that case. Is that kind of it?
Exactly. Yeah. You got your own copy of the blockchain right there in your own home, and you can cut out all the third parties. You don't need them to reference their copy of the blockchain. You can do it yourself.
Yeah. So do, how does this then translate to the end user? Is this just, oh, I go and install a single application on my computer and just like run that instead? Like, what are the kind of, like, how deep does this go? How many different, like, offerings are there?
Yeah, yeah. There's a few different node implementations out there. But basically, how it works with Ronin Dojo is you either buy the parts on Amazon and build it yourself. Our software is free and open source, always will be.
Hmm.
And or you can buy, our pre-built hardware. That's how we kind of monetize. And basically, you plug in the box. It's kind of plug and play, and then you log into a user interface, and from there you can start using the applications and features, doing things like connecting your wallet or using Coinjoin, or setting up a block explorer. It's all pretty much one click deployment, and you can just start playing with the features right away.
Yeah, and now, how much extra hardware is like required to this level? Is this something you can just do on your computer, or is it kind of like a must to get extra hardware?
You probably wouldn't want to do it on your computer because then you wouldn't really be able to do anything else with it.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of better to have a dedicated device, because otherwise you could dedicate like an old laptop to it, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But if you don't have an extra spare laptop, or you don't want to spend a bunch of money on a new, laptop, the cheaper option usually is to just get one of the small dedicated pre-built node options.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Um, so when we're kind of like running this, uh, you mentioned especially the Tor thing, which, as far as a lot of people are concerned, is just some kind of browser they use to like look for stuff on the dark web or something. But um, can you kind of explain why using something like Tor is important? Like,
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
people think, so let me just hit the on the transaction thing. A lot of people think transactional privacy is, can you track the transaction graph on the blockchain? Meaning, like, I send you, you send to me, someone looking at all those payments, but not just on the pure blockchain. But yeah, basically launch into why I think Tor is important then.
yeah. So basically, like you were saying, there's multiple ways to think about Bitcoin privacy. You can think about it at the network level. You can think about it at the blockchain, the transactional level.
Hmm.
And Tor is really important for average Joe out there to understand, because it's not just a web browser to get onto the dark net. It is basically, you can connect any app to it, and you can host any app over Tor, and it basically creates a big long cryptic onion address. And when you connect to that, it's end-to-end encrypted.
Hmm.
So your internet service provider, at the network level, whoever's providing you internet, cannot look at what you're doing, can't sniff out, the packets of the data. It's all encrypted, and it prevents kind of like that man in the middle attack where someone's watching what you're doing. It could be Verizon, it could be whoever you're getting your internet from, and you want to eliminate trust from your model whenever you're talking about financial privacy. And at the network level, the best way to do that is to host everything over Tor. Now, it sounds complex, but any good node out there that they care about privacy, everything will just automatically be set up over Tor. So your instance of Bitcoin, your instance of Whirlpool, your block explorer, all your wallets that are connecting to your node, everything running automatically over Tor really gives you that edge at the network level of privacy.
Yeah. So, what if you don't use Tor? You just do things regular style. What kind of information can your internet service provider find out about you? Just that you're running a Bitcoin node, or what? Are there other things they can kind of find out?
Yeah, they could see that you're running a Bitcoin node. They could see the actual geographic location of that node, down to within, a few feet. Um,
Hmm.
they would be able to see, um, basically, when you broadcast a transaction, those packets would have similar sizes, so that could be used in timing correlation attacks. So then they could see, okay, that broadcast happened right at that moment. Now let's check for when a transaction entered the mempool at that exact same time.
Hmm.
Um, so they could use lots of that metadata to effectively unmask you in many different ways.
Yeah. So if you were, let's just say, mixing your transactions, you're using Coinjoin, but you're still connected to your ISP. You still are not using Tor. Then even if you have a mixed transaction that people on the blockchain can't really tell, uh, people analyzing blockchain can't really tell where it came from. Uh, they could say, well, this they could find this node sent a data packet out at exactly this time, and that's just about the time a CoinJoin transaction arrived in this address. Therefore, we can kind of correlate that that's the person that sent it. Is that kind of the way it is?
Yeah, it would, I'm not sure exactly the perfect scenario, but that's a pretty good, gist of the idea is through things like correlated, like timing attacks and things like that. Their level of surveillance would be much higher and much more effective if you're not using Tor. I don't know that they could necessarily, unmasking a coin join would be very difficult because you have in Whirlpool there's 5 different participants per round simultaneously. But
Mm.
the point being that you don't want to give them any edge here. Any bit of data they can use against you, you want to cut that out, and that's what Tor is great for.
Yeah. Real quick, just on that CoinJoin thing. So, how many rounds are typically done in a CoinJoin? Or like, is there a limit to what people usually do, or how's that tend to work?
So whenever you're running Ronin Dojo and you have Whirlpool running on there,
Mm-hmm.
it just keeps remixing over and over again as often as it can join around. So you can, set up Whirlpool even on like Samurai Wallet on your mobile app and get it mixing and, pair that up with your Ronin Dojo, your node, and you just leave it mixing all day long. And, you might get 50, 100, however many remixes before you decide to spend. But the important thing to know is that remixes are free when you use
Mm-hmm.
Whirlpool. And the way that's possible is the new entrants who enter the Whirlpool for the first time, they pay the mining fees and the fees for everyone else who's already in the Whirlpool. So incoming liquidity basically makes new rounds possible. And every time a mix happens, there's about 1,496 possible interpretations to how your output got there. And, then do that for, 5, 10, 20 mixes. And it's quite an impressive graph that, they really aren't able to follow.
Yeah. It's so all this stuff sounds cool. How easy is this? All of this to set up an actual private Bitcoin financial experience? As in, like
Yeah.
let's just say there's a an average user who isn't quite at the running Linux stage, but they have like edited a a text file, or edited a file in text editor to do a thing because they saw it on a YouTube video one time. Like they can click install on something and follow a wizard or a prompt, but like how many steps or how much is involved from a knowledge base in kind of setting up this ideal experience?
Yeah. Again, I love to talk the technical stuff, but really
Mm-hmm.
this is as easy as, those basic skills you were saying earlier. If you can, edit a text configuration file and you can, do set up and install wizards and follow YouTube videos, then you already have the skills to do this. Like I was saying, we're trying to make it easier, so we're making user interfaces for all of this stuff, and we're trying to remove as much command line crap as possible, so that you don't have to be, some kind of Linux command line wizard to do this. We're not all the way there yet. We're like 80% there, but as far as deployment goes, installing apps, connecting things to those apps like wallets, uh, it's all, one-click deployment, and then you might copy paste, you know, a Tor address or a value or two, and you're connected. Really, it's just, plug in the node if you buy it from us, and it's plug and play. Log into the UI, download the Samurai wallet, and scan a QR code, and then you're paired up to the node, and you can start playing with things.
What about like financial cost? I think I saw some of the pre-built nodes or something around like $600, although the do-it-yourself parts could be like half that maybe, depending on how lucky you get. But is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, yeah. So the Tonto is $600. We're basically charging for a little bit of convenience there. You don't have to put it together. You don't have to flash it. You don't have to go through some big guide. You just plug in the internet, plug in the power, a little red light turns on, and once that light turns on, you can go to RoninDojo.local in your web browser and then log into the user interface and get going. If you're more technical, like tinkerer type guy, uh, you can do the DIY kit. You can get the parts for a little bit cheaper off of Amazon or off of like the Pine 64 website, and save yourself a few bucks by building it yourself, flashing it yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah. Now for coin joins, how much does that tend to cost when you're using like it's obviously a very vague question depending on like your financial activity, but let's just say you spend like you use Bitcoin like 3-4 times a week as far as transactions. Um, how much does that tend to cost? I guess if you include like the mixing for it and then everything else, because Bitcoin
Yeah,
on-chain transaction fees have historic like in the last over the last like 5 years have been pretty high. Over the last year or so, not really that much.
right. Yeah, so obviously you want to transact when there's a low fee environment. That's, in general. Um, so sometimes people will wait to whirlpool like their spending amount until it costs like the equivalent of like 8 cents USD to do it. Um, so wait for that low fee environment, and then if you mix up, say, $1,000 worth of coin at a time to spend here and there, I'd say it might cost you, 20, 25 USD in fees total.
Interesting. So we got basically these options for conducting the experience this way, and the price tags with this. Um, how do you think? First off, what's been the obviously people are already sold on it, or just like I've been waiting for this. I'm jumping right in. But for the people who aren't necessarily yet sold on that this is the way they want to do things, or like new customer acquisition kind of thing,
Yeah.
how's the reaction usually to that sort of, okay, this is what it costs to use Bitcoin the right way kind of thing?
Obviously it varies. There's
Mm-hmm.
people who are more than happy to pay the price to get privacy. There's people who, they get upset and they're like, wait, why isn't privacy at the protocol level
Mm-hmm.
like it is with Monero? Why doesn't Bitcoin have ring CT? And this would all be cheaper. Um, and our answer to all that kind of skepticism is yes, we agree. We wish
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin privacy was at the protocol level, but it's not. The development community made a decision early on to make sure the blockchain is public and auditable, and they decided that if there's privacy done, it's going to have to be at the software application wallet level, and that's what we got to work with. Um, since we can't get it at the protocol level, and there's absolutely no way that Bitcoin is going to hard fork for privacy at the protocol level.
Mm-hmm.
We had at one hell of a time just getting SegWit, right? And that was a net
Yeah.
gain for everybody, right? Now you have all these compliance guys and all this KYC money and regulators and chain surveillance companies worth $1 billion. Any attempt at privacy on the protocol level would receive huge pushback. And unfortunately, I just don't see it ever happening. So what we're stuck with is, the best we got, and that's privacy at the, application software wallet level type of thing.
Yeah, let's speculate on if things had been a little different. So, obviously, the transparency, the auditability kind of argument won out over the long term. Um, Now, what do you think that has done for Bitcoin's adoption versus, if things had been done like the more righteous way, if on-chain privacy had been kind of prioritized? Do you think that it's was just like a wrong turn and things could be much better? Do you think it's sort of like a necessary evil to get to this stage where we're at now, and it just then the higher price kind of gets pushed down to the privacy user? I mean, how do you kind of see how this whole thing is gone?
Um, Basically, it was foreseen what's happening to Monero now. With
Hmm.
Monero, you see mass delistings. You see things like Binance, they don't allow you to withdraw Monero. Um,
Hmm.
they won't list Monero on Coinbase ever. That's been said clearly. Um, the delistings continue, and the pressure continues against uh, Monero because it's strictly anti-compliance, right? That's
Hmm.
one of their core tenets. And if Bitcoin had been that way, as much as I hate to say it, the movement may have been killed for Bitcoin in general, because they see, oh, we can't regulate it, we can't make it comply, then you know the floodgates never would have been opened. The banks wouldn't have been given approval to do custody. The Wall Street guys wouldn't have come in. You wouldn't have had the big Michael Saylors, the big money move in. And I don't really like a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
They're the antithesis of what we do because we're about privacy and we're anti-compliance. But
Hmm.
also, Bitcoin's for everyone. And if you want to put it on your balance sheet as a company, fine. That's not what I care about it for. But I think that keeping the chain open and auditable, makes it open for all types of business, all types of people. And of course, the regulators love that it's open to, compliance regulation if you want to do that. Or if you don't want to do that, you can use Samurai Wallet, use RoninDojo, and
Hmm.
not use KYC, not comply. But yeah, I think it's more of a case of they left it open so that Bitcoin can be for everyone.
Yeah. Now, with something like obviously the opposite end of the spectrum might be Monero, where there literally is no choice of but to use it in a certain way. But what
Right.
about something that maybe, as far as approach at least is concerned, like in between, like Zcash, that you can probably get something pretty robust as far as privacy is concerned at the protocol level, but you also have the option to have it transparent and audible for everyone to see. And I haven't
Right.
kept up too much with how Zcash is done as far as ecosystem development and listings and things like that. I do know that the one thing that sticks out is Gemini support, which is one of the most regulated exchanges in the world, does support Zcash, and so I wonder if that's like a kind of how. What do you think? Do you think that's something that could have been possibly done with Bitcoin, or it could have had an optional yet still hard coded privacy that we could have had kind of had our cake and eaten it too?
Maybe a long time ago it could have happened for Bitcoin.
Mm.
Now where we are now, there's no way. But maybe back then it could have happened. But Zcash was kind of going for being that like inter-exchange privacy coin that is kind of straddled between compliance and privacy. Like you get your privacy on, sending from Gemini or whatever, but that's only after you hand over your ID and,
Mm.
they know you're using a shielded transaction and exiting. Um, so I don't know, it's not really a solution that's good for the like retail and hardcore privacy guys. It might be interesting as like inter exchange or like exchange to hardware wallet. Um, but it kind of stagnated and never went past that. It'd be cool if Bitcoin had some kind of shielded transaction option, but we're just far past that ever happening, unfortunately.
So, how do you think the privacy movement for Bitcoin specifically is going today? I mean, obviously, you guys are still around, you're still doing your thing. There's obviously still coin joins happening. There's obviously still people that want to run their own node. But, like, do you see it as a significant percentage of Bitcoin users or usage?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you know there's more Bitcoin in the Whirlpool than there is in the Lightning Network? Um, it's huge.
Yeah.
People don't actually realize how big the privacy movement is within Bitcoin because of how stealthy and silent many of those types are. It's not something you brag about like people love to do every time they buy Bitcoin on Cash App. They love to post a
Hmm.
screenshot. You
Yeah.
have that loud side of the community, but really there's a huge underground within Bitcoin, and they're all working on privacy. You got multiple wallets with privacy features like Samurai Wallet and Sparrow Wallet. Um, or like Blue Wallet is working on Paynims, Bit47.
Hmm.
Slowly, these new standards are being set, and they will come to many Bitcoin wallets. And so it's going great. There's a vibrant community, big enough for us to build a company around, bringing nodes and providing nodes, and it's great to see. It's growing every day.
So you think it's enough to safeguard Bitcoin's ability to practically function as a private cryptocurrency in the future, meaning that even if the majority of the activity at some point when most people are using it ends up being kind of in a more regulated space, that it's still enough to where if people want to opt out, they comfortably can and can find plenty of people to transact with.
Yes, absolutely. Um, it's never going to be the majority of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The majority usage is going to be, big business, everything totally transparent, huge volumes.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always going to be that community of people who, self-host their own nodes and use, free and open source software, and they're not trusting third parties, and they're transacting privately. That's the demand for that has been here for a long time, and we've seen it. That's why Monero exists, and Dash made their privacy feature, and Zcash. Um, there's a huge community that's demanding this, and honestly, for a while, I didn't know if Bitcoin was going to rise to meet that need. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I spent time investigating Dash and Monero and things like that. But now, after a lot of research and working on nodes and Bitcoin privacy software for a while, I can safely say that, Bitcoin privacy is here to stay, and Bitcoin can be used like electronic cash if you have the right tools.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to hear. Do you think a lot of Bitcoin users, do you think there's a lot of untapped privacy potential in the community? Meaning, there's a lot of people that believe in that stuff but don't realize how far their current usage is from those kinds of private standards. And that it might take a catalyzing event for them to wake up and say, oh, I thought I was using it the right way, and it turns out I wasn't. Now I'm scared. Now I'm looking at other tools.
Right. So that's actually already happened a lot. And that's how we get new users at Ronin Dojo. Perfect example was the Canadian trucker incident. Um, they were using, I believe it was GoFundMe, to support the Canadian trucker protest. And because of that, those people had their bank accounts shut down, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then they pivoted to using Bitcoin for the truckers. Did you see this?
Yes, I did see that there was a Bitcoin thing, and I believe there
And it
was
went
some headline of
spectacularly
confiscation.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a train wreck. And all these influencers who have, thousands and thousands of Twitter followers, or even hundreds of thousands,
Hmm.
they all got caught with their pants down using Bitcoin thinking it was private. You know, there was this common assumption among people that, oh, we can just switch to Bitcoin and use it and we won't get caught and we can support these truckers. And they couldn't have been any more wrong. The Canadian government, you know, or whoever they were partnered with, quickly did chain analysis on the transactions and tracked everyone, and even named some of those big Twitter influencers in, like, they released some legal document that was basically telling them to cease and desist and when we know who you are. And that created, a shock among a lot of people. And then lo and behold, the following weeks, a lot of those guys showed up in the Ronin Dojo chat, and we had
Hmm.
Canadians and all kinds of people coming in, and they were hungry for a solution to, how did those guys track us using Bitcoin? They're all in there asking, like, we thought this was anonymous. And then when they finally find the right tools, it's what they've been looking for all along. They just didn't know. So there needs to be more education. And unfortunately, events like what happened with the truckers are good in the sense that it drives people to the technology.
Yeah, I mean, that does kind of speak to the poverty of the education in the space that people just think, oh, it's like, and that anyone thinks that Bitcoin is private out the box. It's kind of almost the opposite to a certain extent, that it's more traceable in a lot of cases than a bank account. But,
Yep,
people just, I guess, assume, oh, it's crypto, it must be private. And then they kind of come the other way. It is kind of, I have to say, it is encouraging that a lot of people, rather than just, throwing their hands up in frustration or whoops, or continuing to be dishonest, or, in this case, it would be dishonest from here on out now that you've learned. It is encouraging that people have come and been trying to seek the truth after that and try to find a way to remedy their privacy mistakes.
exactly. Yeah, it's very validating for the hard work that a lot of these software developers are doing and node builders. And also it's good to see people willing to learn new things, like you said, rather than just throw it up and say, "Oh, I don't have anything to hide," or "Oh,
Hmm.
this is too hard." Um, I think a lot of people out there, they really are yearning for this solution, and a lot of them just haven't found it yet.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we did mention about the Whirlpool having more funding in the whole mixing, more funds in the whole mixer than on the whole Lightning Network, which kind of brings an interesting point. A lot of Bitcoin that has not been dedicated purely to speculative investing. A lot of the world seems to have moved heavy in the Lightning direction of things. And I have heard a lot of people saying that Lightning is more private than on chain in some way, that it's a privacy solution. And obviously, there's a lot more nuance to that point than might meet the eye. What do you think of the Lightning Network? Well, first, just as like a hot take, but then second, as a privacy solution or as the opposite.
Yeah, so we hear this one often because people always ask us, why at the Ronin Dojo project, why haven't you guys added Lightning yet? And the simple answer is there are privacy concerns with Lightning. There are, major concerns. There's also concerns for fund loss and, permanently losing the funds that you have if your backups are not done correctly.
Hmm.
So diving into the privacy side of things, um, sending privacy on Lightning is okay. You can open a channel and spend all the way out of that channel, sending only, and close that channel, and then you could, spin up a new node, and that's pretty decent privacy. Obviously, you'd want to Coinjoin to open that channel and spend out, and it's a little bit clunky. It's not a good experience to have to spin up a new node every time you're done spending.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so so it's okay, but there needs to be some improvements there. On the receiving side of Lightning, privacy is terrible. It's totally
Mm.
broken. Um, we're waiting for things like Bolt 12, which is like
Hmm.
reusable payment codes. Um, but unfortunately, right now, I don't think Lightning is a viable privacy solution, especially receiving. You can send with it a little bit. It's fast, it's cheap, but it's still a very clunky user experience. Managing channels, rebalancing those channels, putting Bitcoin on the line to have liquidity. If you need to spend half a Bitcoin, then you have to have a channel open for half a Bitcoin. And, when you start to get to big amounts like that, it's just too risky.
Hmm.
But for small payments, it looks kind of interesting. But that's, only if you're running your own node, opening a channel, spending out. Most solutions for Lightning, they just tell you to download a custodial wallet,
Hmm.
which is, managing everything for you, tracking everything you do. And unfortunately, a lot of Lightning is heading that way, where it's too clunky and complex to run your own node right now. So most people just use custodial wallet solutions. Um, so Lightning has a long way to go. That's, the long story short is there needs to be a lot of development, a lot of work on privacy, um, a lot of work on, there's things like channel probing attacks that can happen.
Hmm.
And there's crazy attacks that, like one came out a month ago where everyone had to update, or people could just straight up steal the funds out of your wallet. Um, so a lot of work to be done, and maybe one day we'll stay cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, it even under a non optimistic point of view on Lightning specifically, if a lot of the space moves into a lot of the volume moves into these kind of centralized and custodial solutions, although obviously acknowledging that there's a lot of centralized Lightning solutions that are not custodial, but still, does that do you see that at all as freeing up block space and getting fees low enough for the people using things like Coinjoins that kind of actually need a lower cost for that? Do you think that Lightning might be actually like be like a Pied Piper, taking a lot of the traffic that doesn't care about privacy away, so that the privacy conscious can still have a good experience?
It could be possible. I mean, that's the idea of layer two, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but right now the volumes are so low, that things like liquid side chain, which I believe that that layer two solution has less than 1 Bitcoin in volume per day, so that's tiny. And
Yeah.
then uh, Lightning Network, I think there's like 4,000 BTC in there or something like that.
Mm.
So it's all things considered still very small. Um, Maybe one day, if this stuff scales up and it gets good and it's not as clunky, maybe one day Lightning could be the solution. But I still remain open to other layer two solutions. There's still a long, long way to go for Lightning.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So
It's basically the answer.
that's a good answer.
Yeah.
um, Now, you did mention earlier that you investigated other cryptocurrencies on the way to coming up where you are now. Um, is there any thought of expanding service to other projects? One second. Sorry, I almost sneezed all over this microphone, so apologies to
No
everyone. But
worries.
anyway, is there any thought of expanding to other blockchains, or as it's been it's mentioned it's an open source project? Do you know of any, I guess, forks for other projects that people have made of Ronin?
We don't at this time. Of course, anyone's welcome to fork, but
Hmm.
at this time we have our plate full with Bitcoin, and there's a lot
Hmm.
of work to be done. So that will be our main focus. I know that the Monero guys are very close with like the Samurai Wallet community. A lot of Samurai Wallet users also use Monero. So I would expect to see some kind of Monero node offerings popping up as well. Um, but as far as us building them, we don't have any plans at this time.
Well, awesome. So, where could people find out more about you specifically? Again, as much as you want to be revealed publicly, like where can they
Yeah,
follow what
yeah.
you do, and then where can they follow more about what's going on in Ronin or any other things you'd like to point people in the direction of?
Yeah, you can follow me at GuerraMoneta on Twitter. You can hop in the Ronin Dojo Telegram chat room. It's t.me/Ronin Dojo node, all one word. You can check us out at ronindojo.io, and we have a detailed wiki if you want to read through, or just come in the Telegram chat room and ask us if you have any questions. And we're also on Twitter, at Ronin Dojo Node on Twitter, and I answer the messages on that Twitter account personally.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you guys want to get into Bitcoin privacy, if you're tired of people doing surveillance on your every last move with your Bitcoin, then come check us out and holler at us.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, thanks very much for being on, and yeah, I hope you have a good one.